5 p.m. I'm going to call to order this joint meeting between the City of Westlake and the Seminole Improvement District.
Mayor, if I may begin with preliminary matters.
Sure.
This is Zoe Burgess, your city clerk. The City of Westlake and Seminole Improvement District joint meeting of August 23rd is being held with a quorum of City of Westlake Council and Seminole Improvement District physically in attendance at the Westlake Council Chambers, 4005 Seminole Pratt Whitney Road. If I may, please confirm speakers that will be virtually present. We have Councilman Martinez. Are you able to see and speak and hear?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman Martinez. Public comments may be accepted prior to the meeting utilizing the electronic comment card available on the city's website. Public comments are also permitted at the appropriate time during the meeting. The mayor will call for such during public comment, and you may participate at this time utilizing the system's virtual hand feature and waiting to be acknowledged. Please note this meeting is being recorded, both voice and video, and to remember your mic may be live. I will mute any microphones that carry any feedback or interruptions. If you are a caller that has been muted, you may unmute yourself by pressing *6. Any person in the virtual meeting causing a disruption or being inappropriate will be removed from the meeting. If I may also remind those physically in attendance, please utilize microphones so that a virtual audience and a clear recording of the meeting is produced. Thank you, Mayor O'Connor.
Thank you. All right. 5:02, call to order, joint meeting between City of Westlake and the Seminole Improvement District. Zoe, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Councilwoman Charlotte Leonard.
Present.
Councilman Julian Martinez.
Present.
Councilwoman Pilar Valleron.
Present.
Vice Mayor Greg Langowski.
Present.
Mayor John Paul O'Connor.
Present.
And for the Board of Supervisors, Secretary Leilani Gevers.
Present.
Vice President Zane Beard.
Present.
President Scott Massey.
Present.
We have a quorum on both sides, Mayor.
Fantastic. Let's all stand for the pledge. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, thank both of you as the council and the Board of Supervisors of Seminole Improvement District for this joint meeting. I will be kind of moderating it to go walk us through what the issues are, or not really issues, but the processes and things. Couple things with us today. Also, we have Bob Diffenderfer with Seminole Improvement District Council, Taylor Myers and Aldo De Leon, who are SID field personnel, and Ryan Wheeler as well. They'll all be speaking on various areas to give you kind of a background of what's going on, how things interact. I'll walk you through some things, and then we'll look and talk about timing and how things go forward and how we work together and keep the vision of the city lean, government light, but yet accomplish a lot of tasks. Zoe, do I have share? All right. Let it come up in a second. Just this share. One more share. Okay. Just as a brief history, this is what the site, Mr. Massey will know since he's been here prior to 2013. This is what the city of Westlake and the site looked like in 2013. As you can see, the high school was here. We had the packing plant and Grove Marketplace and the two schools up in the Northeast. Takes me a second here. 2015, there wasn't a lot of changes. You can see some difference in different farming activity, but other than that, there wasn't much of anything in 2015.
Wastewater plant.
And the wastewater plant is in the process of going away. Here's 2017. This is roughly 6 months or less after the city was formed, and the first 500 acres of development was in play, as you can see up in this area here. So. So I'm sorry. In 2019, push that down. Okay. In 2019, you can see that not only the first 500 acres in this area, but you see half of hammocks is under construction and are already starting on all the dirt work in the meadows. So move right along. We'll go to, sorry. And in 2019, you can see how much more we have progressed. And then if you go to 2021, you can see we not only have hammocks, meadows, Sky Cove North, part of Crestwind, Sky Cove South, groves, estates, and also the land for ISTF is being done, and the solar fields are completed. One of the next things here, we'll get to this. Stop sharing. What we've had the GIS, one of the things we have been doing for Sid and the city on both sides of the equation is, because we're new, everything is going into the GIS. We're utilizing it as a fantastic tool to check, track, coordinate things. In this spreadsheet, you can't see the bottom of it, but to date from 2016, since we've been incorporated as a city, we've recorded 50 plats. There are 8 plats that are proposed right now that are in the process of being recorded. Of the parcels that are approved, there's 2,864 parcels or individual lots or parcels that have already been done. As in my report to the council last week, we have about 1,440 that are CO'd. So there's almost 1,000 or better that are under construction or platted, but not yet vertical construction. So let's see here. I can't get to the COs, but one of the things we also do is we have all the COs tracked. So COs, addresses, everything is in GIS. Taylor and Aldo will talk about how we're utilizing that on the Seminole improvement side for tracking repairs, tracking their contractors, et cetera. They'll give you a brief overview on that. What I'll do now is I'll pass it off to Bob Diffenderfer to discuss and talk about the interrelationship and how Sid and City became both and how we're supposed to interact with each other.
There we go. As Ken said, I'm Bob Diffenderfer with Lewis, Longman and Walker. Our firm is general counsel to Seminole Improvement District. I'm going to walk through a high-level view of just the relationship between these two governments. Since none of you guys on the city council were here when the city was set up, and only one of our commissioners was here when the city was set up. So it's, it's information we have presented largely before, but given the posture we're in, I wanted to make sure everybody was on the same page for this. Seminole Improvement District has been around since 1970. Try here. Yeah. I do have hard copies of this presentation, which I bring for just this sort of eventuality.
We need to go old school.
Nor I, but
She's persistent. You'll get it. Would you like for me to recite it for you?
it is a lived experience. Yes, got it. Yeah. So Seminole Improvement District started in 1970. It was organized to support the development of the citrus grove, which the earlier aerial photographs that Ken showed you was here before, the Callery Judge Groves. Over time, since 1970, the Seminole Improvement District Special Act had been changed to allow it a variety of community improvement powers. So the powers that we've got today are laid out in Chapter 2000-431, Florida Laws of Florida. SID is a local government. It is a special purpose local government. It's chartered by the legislature, and as a special district, it has only those powers which are expressly laid out in its special act. Unlike a general purpose government, the city of Westlake, which has full home rule power under the Florida Constitution. There is a provision in the law that allowed for conversion of a special district, and that's what happened out here, and that's how Westlake became created, is the landowners within the boundary of Seminole petitioned to have a town created, and that was done in 2015. SID and the town enjoy a relationship which, as far as I'm aware, is unlike any other relationship between a special district and a municipality in Florida. When Westlake was created, the notion was that since SID was here and SID had a full suite of powers to do water, wastewater, surface water, irrigation, roadways, parking, they could build a railroad actually if you look at their special act, that there was no need to recreate or duplicate those powers in the general purpose local government, i.e. the city of Westlake. So the notion at the outset was to have SID continue to do those things, the provision of infrastructure and administer the water control plan. And I'll come back to what that means, water control plan. And the city of Westlake would assume all of the other general government powers, zoning, planning, land use powers that SID could not do. Because it is a special district, SID has no land use authority, and SID does not have general police powers. So the notion was that they'd essentially be two sides of the same coin. All of the powers necessary to run a city would be encompassed in either SID or in Westlake, and the charter that was set up for the city and an interlocal agreement, which we'll talk about in a minute, deals with the allocation of those powers. I won't say allocation, that's probably the wrong word, how those powers are exercised by each so that we don't get in each other's way. And hopefully we can do this efficiently. The notion at the outset was that unlike a lot of other places where everybody wants to do the same thing, you sometimes get inconsistent results, you get inconsistent rules, you get friction costs money, and that's not good for anybody. SID is governed, as most 298s are, by a 1 acre, 1 vote process. We've got the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act was done under the general law provisions of Chapter 298 Florida statutes. We have a district manager, we have a district engineer, we have a district attorney, and we have field staff. I mentioned earlier the water control plan, and that's a bit of a misnomer these days. That name comes from the early days of the General Drainage Act when these 298 districts really just did water. So you, as a special district, you're required to adopt what is called the water control plan, but the water control plan is really a capital facilities plan. It's supposed to deal with all of the things that you are doing and building. And in Sid's case, it deals with roads, with drainage, with water sewer, with reuse, with lighting, and a host of other things. And it needs to be amended from time to time. The water control plan follows the land use. Because SID does not have land use authority, SID has to look at what the proper jurisdictional authority has allowed or created to happen on the land and then craft a water control plan to pay for it. For example, here, before Westlake existed, there was a development order from the county, and it laid out uses across the site. It created a certain density and intensity. And then SID came along and adopted a water control plan to create the infrastructure to support that land use plan. Now, that has continued essentially unchanged. I mean, there's some small changes over time to date, but now you have jurisdiction on the land use question. The landowner may come to you at some point, or some landowner may come to you at some point and want to change the land use plan. And when that happens, SID, who is in charge of the water control plan, will then need to sit down and assess whether that revised land use scheme it still fits under the existing water control plan, or whether we would have to amend our water control plan to reflect the decisions that you have made as the land use authority. So right now, the plan that was originally approved is pretty much running as adopted. So there's been no need to change the plan, but there may come a time in the future where that will happen. So as Westlake grows and evolves and rethinks or thinks to do its land use differently, we at SID will need to accommodate that in the water control plan. Because SID, as the infrastructure responsible entity, cannot spend money on something which is not in its water control plan. So we have to reflect what has been approved as a land use matter and deal with it in our plan. And I'm just going to go through a series of graphics that are going to show you what our current plan looks like given the existing land use plan out here. The legend is small, the master water distribution plan. So this gives you the infrastructure for the potable water distribution system throughout the existing approved plan. The next one is wastewater plan. Again, water and sewer, the backbone systems. The reuse water plan, we'll talk about it in a minute. We have an agreement with the county to purchase reuse water to use for irrigation out here. The next one is the capital roadways plan, which shows the current planned network of roads through the site. And finally, the drainage plan showing the lake system. We have taken what was the existing agricultural permit for this site for irrigation and adapted it to essentially an urban plan for the city here. We'll talk about those, some specifics about that in a minute. As a formal structural matter, your charter recognizes the relationship between SID and the city of Westlake. And one important part of this municipal conversion process that SID did is that there has to come a point in time when SID will no longer exist. And so the charter provides that SID will become a dependent special district upon 30 years or earlier agreement. Given the rate of build out, you know, who knows when that may be. But that provision exists in the charter. So when SID becomes a dependent special district, all of the infrastructure that SID has created and built will then be turned over to the city. They will become city assets at that point in time. SID will continue to exist as a dependent district, which means you guys or your successors will govern SID at that point. At that point in time, then the finances, and Ken can go into that, will begin to look a little bit different. SID as an independent special district, all of its duties, its obligations, its debt, its balance sheet does not show on the city budget. It is off book for you. So we'll talk about financing in a minute, but none of that stuff shows up on your own budget right now. When SID disappears and it becomes a dependent district, those, assets and liabilities will come over to the city budget. All special acts of the Seminole Improvement District at that point will become ordinances of the city. And the way it was set up was, and this is formally in the charter, is that the city will not exercise any function or provide any service being performed or provided by Seminole. Some of you may know there was a situation similar, sort of, in the neighborhood in Loxahatchee Groves, where the town of Loxahatchee Groves was organized on top of what was the Loxahatchee Groves Water Control District. Both of those entities continue to exist. There was no balance of authority created in the charter, and both of those entities then set out to exercise their authority over the same roads, the same facilities, and often in inconsistent ways. Friction, time, and money. We're certainly aware of that example, but having spent a lot of time in municipal government and local government in Florida, wanted to create a system where each side could do what it does best without interfering with the other. So you see these provisions in your charter. The intention, again, was to have the entities be cooperative and not duplicative. To effectuate the charter, an interlocal agreement was developed, which has been executed and is in effect between the city and SID. It's a binding contract intended to implement the charter, and it acknowledges that SID's water control plan is controlling. Those graphics I showed you a little while ago are essentially in your comp plan as your capital improvements element. I mean, that's how we work together in this. Both parties have matters that lie within their exclusive jurisdiction, and they stay within that and don't try to get in the other guy's, sandbox. And that's worked. I will say, I won't say there have been no issues. There have been issues, but they're not major issues at this point. And we have a very good cooperative working relationship with the city and with the city staff on getting this stuff done. Can the process be improved? Always a process can be improved. So, I'm telling you, we continue to work on this, but there's not nearly the amount of friction you might see someplace else. SID has existing government agreements. Now, these are agreements with Palm Beach County that I'm referring to. The water that you get here is bought in bulk from Palm Beach County. Seminole executed a long-term, very large potable water, wastewater agreement with the county back in 2005, I think, at a time when the then owners of Calorie Judge Groves were envisioning a town of 10,000 units out here. So we, at that time, when we entered into the water and wastewater agreement, we made sure it had capacity to service that much agreement. So you've got plenty of water capacity here contractually for virtually anything you want to do. We also entered into agreement with the county to purchase reclaimed water. When they ran the line from their facility out to FPL, it crosses the M Canal, it crosses our right-of-way down at the M Canal, and we made a deal with the county to purchase reuse off of that line. We've got, as you know, down in the southern end of town, down there below the high school, below where the canal turns and goes south, a storage tank for reuse, and there's a plan afoot to construct additional tanks down there now. We have existing permits from a variety of regulatory agencies, the South Florida Water Management District. We have what's called a diversion and impoundment permit for this entire site. That governs our use and control of surface water. We bring water into the site out of the M Canal. Other than the city of West Palm Beach, I think we are the only other user of M Canal water. That deal was entered into Yeah, I don't have the exact date, but if you've driven the perimeter up at the north end, you see several places where there are gates on the M Canal. The M Canal is typically staged up near 19 feet, so when we need water, those gates are open. Water simply flows in by gravity. It fills these lakes. Previously, when this was a citrus grove, we just flood the grove up to a certain bit and then pump it, through the microjet system and whatever ultimately. But we've adapted that. The engineer pays constant attention to our ability to not just take water in and not impair that, but to be able to discharge stormwater in the event of, large rain events. We need to be able to get rid of it. The elevation here for the water is roughly 3 to 4 feet higher than the elevation at the lower end of the M2 canal where the water discharges. So we have a very high level of service for flood protection here. We can open the gates down there at the south end and the water is just going to run by gravity. We don't have to pump it out. We've got pumps on the southern end. Is that right, Scott?
Yes. Back
That we can, can they be used to pump into the C-51?
No, they're.
Okay, so it's all gravity to get out of here.
Just for back pumping.
Right.
Drought issues.
You may know, if you live in this part of the world, that the surrounding area of the acreage does not have a great level of service for flood protection or drainage. We can clear 2 inches a day, I think is our permitted discharge amount. I think they're limited to a 1/4 inch a day, something like that. So when you get flooding out here, we had Irene back in 2012, 13, something like that. And there was 18, 20 couple feet of rain out here. The grove was dry in 2 days. The neighborhood took weeks to get dry. So you have a very high level.
They couldn't get to us.
Hmm?
Lynn couldn't come to work. People couldn't get to us in the car because the roads south and north were flooded.
Right. The grove was dry,
But we-
but the neighborhood wasn't. So we have a very high level of stormwater protection. We have a water use permit from the Water Management District, which also governs that use of water out of the M Canal. We have a permit from the Corps of Engineers that was obtained when the plan changed from grove to development out here. And that's in the process of extension now, and it contemplates the land use plan that we have all been looking at. CID's got a number of ways to fund its projects. It levies assessments against landowners on an acreage assessment. It can finance projects through assessment. It finances maintenance through assessments. It can issue both assessment or revenue bonds, and has recently issued a revenue bond to pay for the cost of the stormwater tank and the barn facility that CID's going to be putting up out by the power substation out there. These are funded independently from the city. As I said earlier, this is all off book for the city. And no contribution from the city is required. Now, that being said, we have been working on an agreement with the city to allow the receipt of an expenditure of gas tax revenues, which you're entitled to as a municipality. But CID's got authority to do the roads. So we're entering into an interlocal agreement with the city, which is essentially a pass-through mechanism to allow the city to collect gas tax so that we can spend that gas tax on the roads out here, as you would be doing if you were doing the roads. That is the broad general description of the relationships. I've got hard copies, as I said, of this presentation if you want them. And at this point, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you.
We are always available. Ken knows how to get hold of us. If you've got questions, if you want to explore any of this any further, we're happy to come spend some time with you.
Thank you, Bob.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll take your hard.
As a follow-up to a couple of things that Bob pointed out, when SID becomes a dependent district, in your budget now you have a special revenue fund for the HAPPY program, and then you have another special revenue fund for the building department. It would show up similar to that. It would be a special fund that would be allocated, but it's tied in the overall budget, but it's not covered by your ad valorem taxes. It's covered by assessments for that funding of that thing, but it would be inclusive in your overall budget process as we go forward. Also, something that you may have caught wind of recently is Seminole Improvement District. You have in front of you a latest revision of how people can sign up for the water accounts in their solid waste cans and stuff like that. We did have to, again, SID during the pandemic did not do shutoffs and did not charge late fees or shutoff fees and stuff like that. Earlier this year, we reinstituted those items. Last month and this month, we have had shutoffs. We had 128 accounts that were delinquent. We had 14 that we actually shut off. The process is you're consuming water, you get a bill, get 15 days to pay it. You're consuming water, you get your next bill, which has your delinquent bill if you haven't paid it. And then after that, the district goes out and puts a door hanger on your house saying you need to pay this in full by such and such a date, which is usually a week later. If you haven't paid it, your water gets turned off. We generally turn water off on Tuesdays, which usually, and we hang the door hanger the Wednesday before. So you have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to pay your bill. We shut them off Tuesday. We had 14 people that didn't believe us. We shut them off again. We had them crying. However, the process is if they pay it by 2 o'clock, we'll turn it on. SID will turn it on that day. If it's after 2 o'clock, it's the next business day. They have plenty of opportunities. They can pay online. They can pay by phone. There's ACHs, there's auto pay, there's all kinds of ways for people to set up their accounts to pay. So there's really no reason for anybody to be delinquent and be shut off. But we did have 14 this month again. We had 14 or 15 last month that were also shut off. So in case you all get feedback, you need to know that you're 60 something days behind on your bill before you're ever going to get shut off. And
You have to physically send field staff out to shut it off?
yes, we do. Yes, we do. And we physically hang a door hanger as a courtesy. Some facilities do not even do that. They just, it's in your bill, it's in your thing. You don't do it, they cut you off.
There's a cost to that.
Yes, there
There's
is.
a manpower cost, there's a printing cost.
Yes.
Are you charging extra, like a fee when you do?
There is with the door hanger, there's a $20 late fee. And then if it gets turned off, there's a $20 reconnect fee. So again, by being late and or not paying your bill on time or getting shut off, you've wasted an extra $40, which is almost half or more of your potential bill.
And auto pay is an option.
Auto pay is an option, correct. Just to let you know that there's a couple things like that.
Right. I mean, it looks like you're
You pay by credit card, there's plenty of
doing
ways
everything
to-
you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's 5 or 6 different ways to pay, and there's really no excuse to not pay. And it's online, and all you got to do is call the customer service number, and they'll take care of
Right.
it
I
for
mean,
you.
I hate the idea of turning somebody off, but it seems like you're giving them
Okay.
several warnings and every possible option to avoid it.
And over 60 days, it's not.
128 warnings went out. And they all paid, and by today, everyone was paid, even the shutoffs.
Yeah.
They're all paid by the day. So you shouldn't have to threaten people
Yeah.
like that, but what do you do?
It's wild. Hopefully that doesn't.
There's nowhere
become-
you live and you get free water.
Well,
Yeah, right.
standard in the industry, from what I've seen with other districts that I'm involved in, you're going to have somewhere between 5 and 10% of your customers will either be late or shut-offs.
I'm sure.
And
if
it's
somebody
usually the
was
same
kind of-
ones.
Of a serious hardship or something and they called, you guys would work something out with them.
We're willing to look at situations, but we're not going to make, as a policy from the board, not going to make individual things on exceptions for everybody. It's the standard. If there's some real extenuating circumstances, there is some processes that we can do. Couple other things. One of the things that we're going to be doing as I go forward and planning horizons is We're a little late in having this meeting this year. What we're going to be doing is I've scheduled with Zoe and Sandra that we're going to be having a next joint meeting probably in April of next year so that we can talk about things that we want to look at. And if there's something that the city wants to put in their budget to say, hey, we want to do this, we're going to contribute this amount of money, Sid can plan it in their budget. So by the time we get into budget season and we're looking forward, we've got the things in for the following year. Because as you all understand it, it's almost a 1.5 year process before you can actually do something. By the time you get it into your budget, get it approved, and then make it happen. So we're having to look almost a 1.5 year in advance.
I wouldn't be opposed to having multiple joint meetings throughout the year. We have this harmonious relationship where we're like symbiotic with each other. We should probably do this more often than once a year.
We can look into that at least twice a year if you want. The interlocal calls for at least one.
Set the plan in the beginning of the year and see
See
how
where
we
we
did
are.
at the end of the year.
Mid-year.
No,
Okay, we can
definitely
look at
before
that.
Budget season for sure. I don't mind hanging out with these guys.
We could have it 7 a.m. and make it go quicker.
Sure. Coffee.
Bring breakfast.
Yeah. We'll integrate it with coffee with the manager, city manager.
Let's see, what else was there? Water budget. The other things, one of the things that, in the relationship, I think Bob did a good job covering it is, because we're both two different government entities, one can't dictate to the other what to do. So it has to be a negotiate, hey, what can we do? How are we going to do it? How are we going to solve this problem? And how are we going to meet the needs of the public? And I think everybody in this room here is in that mindset, which again, that's how we keep the government light, make it work, make it efficient and effective for the residents. At this time, I'm going to have, Taylor, you going to go first or is Aldo? All right. I have Taylor, Myers and Aldo. They're going to share a couple things of what Sid is doing with the GIS on how we're utilizing it in the overall maintenance and operation of the city, of the facilities within the city so that we can track and meet all the requirements associated with whether it's DEP, whoever it is on the thing. So we can show how you do that.
Well, let me say, and part of the reason I want to do this is so that I know you get questions, is the water safe, is this or that? This is the process that we have to follow. So, and it's very thorough. So they are the ones to present it. They deal and live with it every day.
Zoe, you want to put this one back on share?
We do get those questions.
Yeah.
That's what they believe.
Okay.
Working with Seminole Improvement, we're in charge of all the utilities and the infrastructure. So with GIS, what we use is a few of our systems in here. If the green triangles you see on there is fire hydrants. We go around once a year, test all the fire hydrants. If there's any problems with them, we can actually click on them and write a comment, and it lights them up as green if they're good, or you can mark them down as yellow where there's a problem with it that has to be assessed, or red means that we haven't got to it yet. Then also you see these water droplets here are some of our sampling points that we test from 5 days a week for chlorine and pH. We pretty much mirror the Palm Beach County standard since we're a consecutive user. We also, as well as testing at our green boxes, which are our sample requirements, we go inside of the communities and test further. So if you have a dead end or if a community is still growing, we still check the chlorine at the dead ends and flush it if necessary. with the GIS system, we can actually track that, so we can keep track of how many gallons we're flushing versus how much we sell versus how much we paid for. So we can keep pretty tight track on that. A few of the other things we keep track of is valve exercising. So once a year, you're supposed to pretty much put a hand on every valve. So you'd have to fully close it, fully open it. Every valve has like a brass ID tag that says that it's a gate valve, what size it is, and 20 turns to close, 20 turns to open, whatever. And you're able to track it. I can actually click on one and show you.
And while he's doing that too, those water droplets that he was talking about with our sampling stations, those are, strategically placed for where we actually get the water from Palm Beach County Water Utilities. That way, we have a way to test when the water, when we receive it, and then we also have the testing location within the site, so that we can have that comparison between in the site and where we actually get it from, to see if there's any
from the
any difference.
Correct. Is the water relatively the same at the different sampling points? Or is there variance?
At the required sampling points, there's not too much difference. But like I said, once you get into like the back parts of community, sometimes you have to do flush and maybe flush 1,500 gallons from a fire hydrant, which we do get calls from residents because they're thinking you're wasting water, but you're actually improving the quality of it. But yeah, sometimes we
That
go,
would be what, like the chlorine content's too high,
no, it'd be too low.
too low?
Yeah.
Flushing it, it adds.
Yeah, it brings it back up. So the chlorine is used as like the disinfectant process. So that would eat up, if you have any growth or anything in there, chlorine would kill essentially.
Flushing the hydrant, it increases the chlorine level?
Yes, because from where because at the interconnect, it's usually the highest where we get the water from the county. And then at the back of the neighborhoods, it's usually lower. So you're pulling the new water through.
Sitting is hard on water. It loses its chlorine residual
Right.
when it sits. So in these new communities, when, we get it all cleared, we can start building houses, start issuing meters, but there's no flow. So that's when they flush it. Then they want to keep monitoring, even though we're good at the corners, and it's fine, but we always want to be able to say, okay, we had a 0.7 or a 1.2, and we track it through so that we're always good. And that's what does. You flush it, it brings fresh water through and brings that chlorine residual back up.
For instance, this is going back to the valve exercising. We had one of our coworkers exercise this valve on the 15th at 1:30 p.m. It took 26 turns to open, 26 to close, so everything was good. So it highlights as green.
Now, can you tell exactly which employee it was that did that?
His name-
Yeah, it says right here.
Michael Beck, got it, right. Very cool.
And Taylor, if there was ever any issues or anything, can you take a photo and actually attach it to this and show?
Yes, you can. You can take a photo, and then actually, instead of lighting up green, you can report a problem, so it'll light up yellow. You can write a comment, and whatever the problem may be, you can go back in there.
Now, is this GIS system fully internal, or is it like
It's cloud-based.
but is it a public thing, like? or
No,
is
it's
it
not.
We strictly use, or Sid strictly
It's,
uses?
it's internal use for SID and city.
City, we own it.
There will be certain aspects of the GIS that will be public facing, but
Really?
nothing of a sensitive nature for issues for distribution, et
What
cetera.
type of things would be for?
Some of it will be in the building department software where people can check on different things. We're working on that.
It'll integrate to an outside platform, like it pulls data from here?
Yes, you'll be able to log in, like in the building department software, you'll be able to log in, look at different things from there. But we're also using this same database in the building department as well. So everything, whether it's the building department software that's coming online or anything that Sid's doing, all of our plats, all of our site plans, et cetera, are all tied ultimately to the GIS database.
I'm guessing geographic information.
Geographical information system.
System.
And it's provided, our contract with that is with Florida Technical Consultants.
That's something you guys pay a subscription to, or?
Yes, the city pays a subscription for what it needs and uses, and so does SID.
And it's constantly updated with the latest building and all the infrastructure going in. It's constantly updated.
That's great.
Then that's pretty much the extent of what I do with it. Aldo will be able to go more in depth when he does with all the landscaping and keeping track of all the contractors. Do you have any questions?
What's the circle with X's on it?
Circle with X, that means a valve. Yep.
What were the red diamonds?
The red diamonds are hydrants we haven't got to yet. Yeah. So you can actually just click on one, and it's a little bit different on the desktop app, but you can essentially click on one and put all the information in on it. It's actually easier to use on your phone or your iPad. But
You could be in the field and actually updating it as you're in the field.
correct, yeah. So you can be in the field and say if there's a valve that wasn't updated correct or a hydrant that isn't there, you can actually stand pretty much right next to it, drop a pin, and then associate it with whatever it is. If it's a 10-inch valve or whatever. Boundaries.
How's our water in terms of like hardness out here? Do we have soft water
So
or
it's
hard water?
No, it's considered soft water, but it's what they call depositing. You want whenever you're making up water when it leaves a plant, you want some calcium in the water. You need it to be slightly what they call depositing, so that it was really based back when they used to have ductile iron everywhere. Because if your water is really soft and really aggressive,
Right?
it'll actually strip metal over time. It's like RO water. Pure RO water is not good for you. It'll actually strip the parent metal, so you can get holes in pipes and all. So they always introduce a little calcium. One is not, it's good for you, but the other is that if you cut these pipes after years of use, if it's a good system, they'll have a buildup on the inside. It's just calcium. It's nothing,
Right.
but in lines will last for 100+ years. But so it is considered soft water, but it is slightly depositing. It's not on the hard scale, but it will. You can have some water spots, slight water
Right.
spots,
In
but it is soft.
in that realm, one of the things we have had, two or three people that have put in whole house water purification systems, shall we say,
2 or 3.
that actually call us back and complain about the water, but the problem is they're stripping out all the good stuff that needs to be in the water to preserve it, and their water goes bad in the house. We had one last week that we tested with the health department. Perfect outside, et cetera, inside after their filter system, they had bad water.
Yeah, they're paying a lot of money for that. I know.
It's
a bad
thing,
idea.
because unless somebody wants to thoroughly explain the systems we've seen have all been cartridge type setups, so the water goes in and comes out. There's no backwashing mechanism. There's no, when does it go bad? And so what happens if you have small particulates in water that are way below the threshold, never bother you on a day-to-day use. Well, if you have a carbon filter, say, that's trapping those little, after a while, I've seen it where the water is much worse after it's going through a filter because it hasn't been changed and maintained than it was coming into it, because it gets loaded with particulates and all this other stuff. So it's a bad idea. We have chlorine for a reason. That gives that residual to keep everything sanitary. And they go and they like to strip out the chlorine, which I understand. But when you do that, on the backside, that water sits in the backside of the house. There's no chlorine with it. And, you have stuff in the lines already there, and you start having problems.
Scott, why isn't there reading now and I can actually taste the chlorine?
So
There's a hint of it.
we have pushed with the county really hard. So you know how we clean all the pipes out here? They try to take care of assembling, of flushing, and doing a good job, which they do. But all this water comes from in town. It's a long ways, and your chlorine dissipates. And the county is what they call a total chlorine, and it's coal forms is what it's based on, right, Ryan? Coal forms, and so they go with a total chlorine. Is what they counted on. So we have a level that we have to maintain, and we test it on total. Well, they do even though you can have a total residual and be in limits, there can almost be no free chlorine left, meaning if anything else gets introduced into water, its ability to kill it and act, there's almost none left. And since we are so far out, our chlorine levels our totals were getting real low out here, and it was a battle. This was when we were starting, before we started building. The county used to flush. So when we came online, we had gone to once a year, what they call a free burn. And so they switch over from chloroform, they switch over to to a free chlorine residual. So they introduce chlorine and now they measure on a free. What free means, that's at the point of measure, that number you read, that's how much is left in the water that can act on something. So it means that there's nothing in the water. It's disinfected everything. You still have a free residual floating through. And so that's great for us because as they're doing all this work, we can flush it through the system and it gives a quote burn. It just, if there's anything in the system, it takes care of. So they only run it out here at about time it gets to us into two parts free.
Yes, it's sometimes even higher, up into the threes.
They're shipping
Yeah.
it at a 4 to give you an idea. At about a 4 parts free out to us. But by the time it gets here, it gets up to a 2. So we'll flush the whole system, but they're doing it twice a year for us now to keep. And so what happens is we come off of free and we go back to total measurement and our totals are high. You know what I mean? Because there's nothing. We scorched the earth. And it's really great. And then it will slowly over time, our residual just drops a little lower, and then we'll have a burn about every 6 months and they'll do that and it goes back up again. That's why you can smell the chlorine, the free chlorine.
Right after a burn.
And it's the convergence of the two water chemistries that really do it. Right when they start the interface of the free and the total combined, it gets a little, you can smell it pretty strong. But when you smell that chlorine, that's a good thing. I mean, that means you've got a good strong residual coming in, and that's a good time. I tell people that if they're worried about the house, they don't use the water a lot. When they smell that, flush all your water lines, turn them on, let them run for a little while. It just helps everything.
And if you actually look at our water hydrants, fire hydrants, you'll actually see they kind of correlate with the free burns. We'll actually go through the whole system and flush every single hydrant because of that high level of chlorine. So if you actually click on them, it'll correlate with when the free burns are actually happening.
Now, is that our only ability to regulate the chlorine or?
Yes.
Yes, we have no way of introducing
The
it.
water comes in from the county. We don't really touch it. We don't treat it at all. We just
That's
send it
correct.
out there.
That's right.
All we can do is discharge certain areas to try to bring in that fresh stuff.
Pressure. That's correct.
Got it.
There's some communities that, and it doesn't make sense to us if we're customers of the county buying water from the county. I want a residual that's acceptable at point of connection to carry through to your house that's down inside. And some communities in the past, they've actually pushed them because the residuals be so low when they get it, but they're passing just barely. Well, then it can't sustain any distance, and they've actually had them put in rechlor facilities where they have to rechlorinate the water going in. And it's an additional cost that I don't think we'll ever have to get to. I think we've got a good understanding. And Bob has been working with our interlocal agreement to get that number perfect.
The county system is subject to permitting from DEP and our state standards for how it should be. So we contractually obligated to, but they in fact meet all the standards.
We also have a really good working relationship with the county field guys. So if we ever see it dropping, we get them to flush on their side of the
Right. Just make
meter. Yep.
Before it gets to us.
Right.
Yeah, so we're not paying for the flush, and they're keeping it up on their side.
Before construction started, when they built, y'all familiar with the big water storage tank on North Lake Boulevard? It's big when the county built out when they were gonna build scripts out there some years ago. When that was designed and built, they knew they were gonna have to take and flush 1 million gallons a day just to keep residual. 1 million gallons a day, filling a 4 million gallon tank, is that what that was? But that was baked in the thing because the water was coming so far and they didn't have any way of rechlorinating that they were flushing all up and down where Arden and all that other stuff is. Not Arden, Avenir. They were flushed to the point where people started complaining because it was flooding out the world. But they had to keep that fresh water coming, keep it coming from the plant. They used to flush here when this was a grove. They had pipes sitting everywhere and they just flush. And all that, it's good and bad. It's good for us because we have huge pipes with a lot of supply and we have a lot of availability here for both wastewater and water. The downside to it is we were slow getting here and getting it, so they had to waste a lot of water to keep the lines fresh. That's all. But it's getting better. It's getting better every year. Every year If they keep building homes, it just gets better.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Anything else? Aldo?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job, David.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
As a point that Taylor made, actually Aldo and Taylor are faster and better on their cell phones than they are on the laptop. I ask them a question, they go, here it is. You know, so they're extremely expedient in the use of the tools that we've
I'll
provided.
clarify one other thing. Our IT division is slow compared to these two. Anytime we have a problem, if any one of them around, they get it up, they get it running, they can wire. They're more tech savvy than the people we pay good money to. So for that.
Sounds like we should evaluate our tech budget.
We're on GIS most of the time.
Right.
All right. So my name is Aldo De Leon. I'm a part of the field personnel here at Seminole Improvement District. And we also utilize GIS for landscape and irrigation. We have 4 contractors, 3 being landscape and irrigation, and the 4th being a mulch company that we contract out to do everything at once. So what you're looking at here is we have gone out through the field and walked, every irrigation zone. And in the process of walking every irrigation zone here at Westlake, and let me take this one out real quick. So what you'll see is here, what we've designed is we have color codes. We have blue, green, and red. This purple one, we have to add on and change it to green. But what we have done is we have walked every irrigation zone and created a boundary. So when you click on it, if I'm driving down the road and I see a dry spot or something, dying or in the process, we'll go ahead and look into it. We're able to pull this up, see what clock it's from, what zone it is. Instead of not knowing our system, we're able to pull it up right away. The techs are able to pull it up right away. They are responsible for creating a wet check report every month. So they report to me. They'll go ahead and submit that, and I'll review it. Any repairs they've made, any advice they have, or any adjustments they need to make, they'll go ahead and write it down, and I keep that on a folder for every clock. So we currently have 9 clocks, over 800 zones that we look after. So, we just, all these dots are just the boundaries that we have jotted down, and we work alongside GIS. So what we've also added is maintenance tracking. So you see here, you have a lot of red points. And there we're able to track, if we see a tree that's declining, we'll jot it down. They'll look into it, do what they need to do to correct it, or if they need to replace it. And since we've utilized this, we've also integrated a new system where we're able to task them with it on a monthly basis, and can mark it as complete. So then we'll if we notice it, they can mark it as complete. We'll go verify it, and it'll be completed. And we're currently in the process of designing that. We're in the final phase, but this is what we've integrated with that. You have the whole clock. So, if you ever see our irrigation techs out there, and you see water on during the day, 9 times out of 10, they're working on the wet check report. And then at times we do have dry areas, something's gone bad, a valve's gone bad, it's gotten stuck. And they're also watering the area to make sure it doesn't decline any further. So that's pretty much what we use landscape and irrigation here. I think another thing I could add on. So let's see. So I think one of these was, so right here, we're also able to take photos and show that, it was replaced. Let me see. Yeah. So we're able to show photos that the area that was declining has been replaced, and they'll mark it as green. Well, we would actually have to mark it as green, but that's why we integrated the new system. So that's pretty much it for the irrigation and landscape. You guys have any questions?
Aldo, if I may, these irrigation clocks, they have to physically manually get set and changed?
Well, when they're installed, they get set, there's, depending on how many zones, so it's a smart system. So you'll have, let's say, 5 connections. And, the first master valve will control 1 through 25. 26 through 50 will be the second one.
So my question is like, say the sprinklers are turning on at 5 PM and you'd rather turn them on at 5 AM.
Right.
Is that something you physically have to come?
Correct.
like,
I could do it for,
inside my
no,
house?
No, digitally.
He can-
I can do it digitally.
You can do it like from your phone?
Correct,
Yes.
yes. So that's a whole separate application.
And a fire coming up the north side of the property. And
turn
really
on
thought
other
about it, say, turn on everything on 60th Street. You can turn them all,
Wow.
yes. So I knew where you were going, but no, he doesn't have to. go
Yeah.
To say, if that system doesn't exist and if we don't have it and it exists, we need to.
No, it exists.
The
It's,
Rainbird system is the top
yeah.
of the line.
it's really, really smart system. You may see it kick on early, 5 PM, because the amount of zones that are on that clock to get enough time for every zone, it equals out to be till 7, 8 in the morning.
So you just have to pick.
Yes. Yeah, correct. So, being schools out, or in, we'll rather have it in the afternoon than the kids going to school walking,
Right.
So also in that system itself, there is a not irrigation weather sensor. So we have it set, like say 1/2 inch of rain. If it fills that up, it should shut off the irrigation system completely for 24 hours.
But it has to rain at that sensor. It can be raining across the street. The
Yeah.
sensor's over here. If
Yeah.
the sensor doesn't get it, it will come on.
Yeah. So at times you may see it still on, but once it reaches that point, it won't kick on till 24 hours.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, I think it was like Sunday at 4,
Yeah.
and I'm taking my golf cart to the grocery store. And I'm going through all the sprinklers on the multimodal pathway. I'm assuming somebody was doing a wet check or something.
yeah,
Or the system may be coming on at that time in order
Yeah.
to get all the zones
Got it.
watered. Because what we also try to do,
Just tough luck. Yeah, they knew I was.
what we've also tried to do is keep most of the areas where we know people are going to be jogging or walking and stuff, watering later in the cycle, so that we try to accommodate as much as possible but with over 800 zones to get watered in a 24-hour period, not a lot of free spots.
We try not to do
Yeah.
the ones on the multimodal areas
Yeah.
till the evening, or sometimes Sunday, like in mornings or something, when we think there's less traffic on them, we try to compensate for catching up.
Makes sense.
Yeah, and at times the system, the valve itself, the solenoid on top could go bad. So that's why you may see it stuck on. But we'll get notified and go out and make that repair.
Because the system also notifies them of excessive water consumption as well.
Right.
Correct.
It's
Yeah, so
been too long.
Yeah, it has a threshold. It's they call it flow zone. So when the contractors install it and they hand it over to us, they're required to do a gallon per minute check. So what they'll do is they'll run the whole system and they'll pick up how many gallons a minute it'll do, and then there's a threshold. So if it exceeds a certain percentage, it'll automatically shut off. And if it doesn't exceed that percentage, it's a let's say it's not reaching its full capacity, it'll notify us. So then we could find dirt in the line in the rotor itself, the sprinkler head, and the wet check guy, the guys that do the wet check will correct it and clean it out and get it back in working order.
It's awesome.
So
Now, this is reclaimed water. Is that okay if it sprays on me?
When you're.
Actually, you shouldn't be drinking it out of the head. It is high disinfection. It's the highest disinfection water that we have. And it comes, we're talking about the level that it comes here, and we're around a 1. It's hitting our tank down here. There's nothing living in that one. It's clean. It's high disinfection. You can smell the chlorine. We were testing some water a while back, and we actually having a higher chlorine residual in the reclaimed water than our potable water.
Oh,
But
wow.
it should, it should be. That's just for safety.
Yeah.
And just to add on to the irrigation, just to have an understanding, we do not control the inside the HOA. So inside the communities, we're not responsible for that and don't control that. So, yeah. Any other questions you guys may have?
Great that you can do it remotely.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's,
So now when I'm walking in the morning and I'm getting wet on one and it cuts off on the other, I'll just.
yeah, correct. So it's going through the cycle. And if it's the morning,
Clear it this time.
and if it's the morning, it should be on its point
Yeah.
to finish. So
You may want to talk about the water meters in Westlake. Talking about.
The reads.
Digitally look at that.
Oh, well, that's just part of our whole system. We have,
Water meter for the house.
yeah, we
Correct.
put in Zener meters. We have to put those into the whole, and you know, it's like anything else. You have growing pains. It's a new system, but, every meter it has a collection point. It goes to our office, basically, and it goes right to Zener. So we have a third-party billing system. It collects the data, every 30 minutes, every hour.
yeah,
It's updating. And so we don't have to go around and manually read meters. It's all sends in. So you'll notice on our lift stations, we have these antennas on some of them. Anywhere you have a little sketchy service, we put a repeater antenna so it shoots it on up to here. So we trap it internally, plus it goes right on to our billing people, so it goes direct. You know, it's not perfect, but you know, when they have to go out and they have a list of 100 of them that are acting up, either not reading or doing something, it never sends more.
Yeah.
They either don't read and catch them. That's when
Yeah.
people get upset, is that they don't get much of a bill. And then we find out there's a register messed up because it sends a code to us. And then they say, oh, well, guess what? For last 2 months, it's only been reading, but here's the real reading. The reading is physically on it. And then you bill them for an extra $200, and they're like, "Oh my God!" Well, you still
Used it.
Right. But those also tell us too. So if someone has a line break in their house, it's going to show high water use. It's going to light up. We'll be able to see it when Aldo runs reports. You're still running those in.
yeah, correct. Every morning we run the
We run
reports. We'll check whether they have a cut wire, so cut wire, or the MIU repeater the batteries would go bad, and we'll just go out there and replace it, get the read for they could do the billing, and keep up to date with that.
But it'll alert us of big issues.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, even if its satellite is down, it'll notify us and we'll correct it.
So we've had people complain about the irrigation on the reclaim. So we have the digital meters on everything. And you'll go and the person said, I manually watered at this time and my water bill's this. Well, the timer was set and he went to manual override. Well, going to manual override, that still doesn't change the auto setting that's on. So basically he's watering twice a day. And his bill went up and he was all been out of shape about it. And so Lynn just printed him out a report that showed the daily use of his water, broke it down to the 12 hour. You can see the spikes, no use, going off at 8 o'clock in the morning when he was watering it, getting to 2 o'clock in the morning, spike back up where it was going off at 2 o'clock. It's what went through the meter. So there's checks and double checks.
Yeah.
Awesome there.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
So, and one other thing about GIS that what these guys are doing from a tool, it's exceptional. But there's so much when they stop. If you're riding with one of them and they have their iPad or phone, you can punch in this address, you pick it, and it tells you everything. It can show you all the valves that are surrounding, so you can know where you need to isolate. It'll show you all the water lines. It'll show you what plat it refers to back to, where's Seth? Oh,
Reside in the
Oh. But so when all the plats are created, it ties it back to the actual plat that it was done on, back to the address, and the person that owns the house, at that address, you punch it in, it has all of his information. Everything that tax collector has, I mean, it's not, but everything is right there just by clicking in that physical address. You can see everything. It's amazing the detail we have. And they can manipulate it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you have two ways to see the bill.
Yes,
Like
ma'am.
if somebody called you, you can check on your side or their side.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah,
We
that's
can look at it both ways and we can see the trend
Yeah.
in waters, but that's handy a lot of times. And it generally puts the rest in argument. People are always right. And there's sometimes, we will have an issue, but it's very limited. And we've had people say that we've had line breaks. They always say the neighbors overwater a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Same ones that are overwater.
I heard
complain
that.
about the water bills.
I
Yeah.
heard that a lot.
And it drains, so they say there's a break. We've responded, and I'm ballparking it, but I'm gonna say at least 100
Yeah.
that we've been called out to that say that we have a problem on our side, from the meter
Yeah.
to the house is the homeowner, meter back, and not one time of all those has it been on the city side. It's all been on the on the homeowner side. Most of them are overwatering. They're watering and watering and watering, and it's just flooding everything. But anyhow, the guys do it. The guys are on top of it really well. And
Usually,
Thank you.
this is, say, you water on a Tuesday at like 12 o'clock, and then your next door neighbor waters at the same time. So it's, instead of getting 30 minutes of water, 10 minutes of water, you're getting double that, which causes a lot of time for all, because it all drains to the center and to the front. So we'll get that water box full of, meter box full of water.
And to add to that, when the homeowner takes over the house, I've noticed, because I've talked to some, that when they turn over the irrigation, being new plant material, they need more water. So they forget to adjust the time. And, you're running 15, 20 minutes when you should only be running 5 to 10, so then that's another thing I've
adjustment that
noticed.
needs to be made after handover.
Yeah.
So why does the water build up around the water meter in the front of some?
Because that's the low spot.
Correct.
Where it
In the
drains.
middle of so you look at your homes,
Mm-hmm.
just what they were talking about. You have overwatering. That water is going to go from the center point, the high point, to the front, and it stops at the sidewalk. What's there? That's our meter box. So it fills it up with water. And that's that's the lowest point, and all the water drains to.
Yeah.
And it's so we had one person, I won't say where it's at or where it is, but it was an ongoing issue, And finally, I met Taylor over there. I said, turn it off. Just turn off their reclaim water. They don't ever know you turn it off. And surprisingly, I said, let's just go check it day after tomorrow. Well, the next day, the sidewalk was dry. Now, everybody's been complaining about the sidewalk for months. We were instructed to dig up the world and figure it all out. Cut off the water. It dried up. Told them, they still didn't correct it, and it's back to wet again. But it's absolutely going through the meter, going to the irrigation. So, yeah, that's why it gathers up.
Does Sid have a recommendation we can put out to the residents that says like, Sid recommends you run your irrigation for 3 minutes a zone per zone, 5 days a week.
Sid gets paid for every gallon that goes to it. I'm not gonna discourage you anymore.
All right, maybe the city should put something.
Well,
It'd be suspect coming from the utility.
I do think we
That's
should
funny.
caution people about overwatering. And also, we've had several occasions where the person thought they were setting it up on a different schedule. And actually it had the old original schedule in. So they were like watering 2.5 times what they would normally water because both sequences were coming on. And once they figured it out, they changed it, but they only showed up with their water bill, but they realized, oh geez, I'm only supposed to be watering, between these hours. How come it's coming on now? Well, if they look at their system, the system was set up to water at that time.
And the last thing we'll say, and just so that people understand, there's a bigger reason that we chose to use reclaimed water here. Other than this, it's just a responsible thing to do. You're reusing the wastewater. It makes good sense. It's very expensive because I had to run double the lines everywhere through here. But we haven't experienced in a few years, but it wasn't that many when we go into droughts. When you have a drought and we go into water restrictions, they start cutting you back to 1 day, 2 day a week. We don't have to cut back anything.
Right.
Reclaimed water is not regulated.
Oh, wow.
So everyone can keep going, and that's the beauty of going with reclaim. You have all this landscape, and I remember a conversation we had that what happens if you go on water restrictions and they see you get cut back in half, you got all this stuff, we're growing, what are you gonna do? Well, they're all powerful, South Florida Water Management, they're not gonna let you have their 50% of what you had or 25%. So by going to reclaim, we've avoided that. So you can keep your yard pretty all the time. That was one of the big keys that we decided
Thank you, Aldo. Any other questions for Aldo?
One more
Mhm.
question, and that is, I'm noticing more and more homes are doing this now. They're going from their driveways,
Mhm.
connecting a little bit, and then straight down the center, right to their backyards with paper bricks. A lot of homes are starting to do it now, especially right when I'm on Goldfinch. You can turn right in, just there's like 5 or 6 houses right when you pull in. I'm like, that cannot be permitted, going straight down the center of the homes,
So they're
going
flowing
right to their
Between the
backyards.
two houses.
between the two houses.
Because like when I
brick.
get up in the morning, you can see where when people are sprinkling, it comes straight out to the sidewalk, because it's sloped a little bit for the drainage from the backyard to the front yard. But I'm noticing more and more people are doing it. Is that going to affect drainage?
It potentially increases the impervious area, so for more runoff faster. However, one of the things we do is we do have the code enforcement officer on thing now, and he is checking out permitted projects and non-permitted projects. So he's starting to look at those kind of things. I don't believe we've permitted any of those, have we? Suzanne, we haven't actually officially permitted any of those, so we'll be looking at those.
That does not look right, but okay.
We had a person take their gutter drains, 6-inch, Taylor, this big, trenched down our lake bank and stuck them out on each side of the house, stuck them out, had the pool guy trenching, just stuck them in, covered up. So that's a big problem because you get erosion and everything else. The lake banks from the property line down are SIDS. They're for everyone's viewing pleasure, not for use or they tromped on. And so we
had red
tagged
tagged
them
them.
and they got to pull it out, but then they got to get compaction back. I mean, it's a big deal in these lake banks. It's more than just cut a slope in grass. So they have to recompact it, resod it, get it all set back up. So it's going to cost them a lot of money. It probably costs them much fixing it than it did putting it in. Bam,
Wow.
covered water.
Okay, moving right along. One of the things that's come up in part of this, I'll stop sharing now, Zoe. Stop sharing. I think I'm done. One of the things that, as we're looking at, is things that are coming forward, and there's been an offer made to myself and the city and Sid by Mr. Carter and Minto of paying for the services for Don Herring, because as we're starting to grow, the park issue and what we're going to be doing in the park on Sid's side for some of the stuff now starts to become more of something we all need to look at from the city and Sid's side of what are we going to do with it and what's the time frame and stuff. Minto, Mr. Carter, has offered to pay for the services of the Sid/city to engage Don Herring in some preliminary designs for what could get going on, engage the public, engage the council, engage Sid as to what we could do as future park and park improvements and stuff like that.
Thank you.
And also, as part of trying to finish up Seminole Pratt Whitney Road, they have offered to construct the monument signs at the entry to the park up front. So as we're going to go ahead, because I think part of it is they're wanting to get Seminole Pratt, all the monument signs finished at one time finally, and then go from there. And Mr. Carter's here. If you have questions of him.
Thank you, Ken. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board, and Council, thank you. It's really great to see all these faces in one room. Otherwise, I'm chasing you guys like cats, but otherwise. Let me, if I can, back up the bus just a little bit to kind of set the stage of a number of things that are coming together, which really became the genesis of, as I've, shared with Scott or the mayor, my mind never stops. So I'm, always coming up with these crazy ideas. And the genesis of this notion really went back to the ISTF project, which was the big academy, the high school, the middle school, some office buildings, stadium, a whole kit of parts around that. And as part of their concept, they were also going to fund at a significant level the construction of the park. Unfortunately, today, that project is still out there, but I don't have any clarity as to when they're going to secure their financing and their capital to construct it. In order of magnitude, it's anywhere from 400 to $500 million. It's a significant project. So with that, as time has traveled on, and as part of working with the mayor on coming up with a vision of where at one point can we ultimately, locate the city with facilities and a chamber of your own, we've thrown out the concept of creating a community center as a notion in the park so that, pick a number, 7, 8, 9, 10,000 square foot type of facility could be a multi-purpose room, but also could be a meeting room for the SID board meetings, could also be a chambers facility, but it really becomes the heartbeat of the community in a beautiful park setting. So as a number of these things, the ISTF project, contemplating a long-term vision of where and how some city facilities could come together, it really struck me that in the absence of a plan, you'll never get there, right? You need a roadmap. And I am offering the idea to, it's not a Minto-driven project, so let me start there. My intent and Minto's intent would be to provide a grant, if you will, for the lack of a better word, to Seminole Improvement District, for example. And SID would engage Don Herring, so SID would be hiring Don. We would fund the money and Minto would step back. Don would engage in a series of community meetings, get community consensus. How would they like to see a 70 some odd acre park be programmed and built over time? To kind of give you a sense of scale, any type of large regional park like this, I think Ryan and Suzanne will tell you, you're probably talking $30 to $40 million. I mean, these are significant assets. And the fact that we had and may have an entity that's willing to build that for us is still an intriguing idea. But I also subscribe to the theory at some point we have to take control of our own destiny, right? We've given a lot of grace, a lot of runway. It still may happen. It still may not. I don't know. But let's go ahead and start setting the table. And so having Sid engage Don to come forward and do that and engage the community, because then I think this becomes a great opportunity to bring that community engagement to the table. And I'll use Ken's vernacular, and maybe Don comes up with a low, medium, high concept. Low impact, passive park, few fields, low maintenance, kind of not overly expensive. And then maybe a medium concept, a little bit more capital costs, a little bit more maintenance, may take a little bit longer to build. And then a very high end one, tons of buildings, big facilities. But again, in the absence of trying to get that input from the community and then letting Ken, with his hat as the district manager and city manager, then kind of lay, his administrative expertise on top of that, then bring together what I would call a cost feasible plan based on that input. Not everyone's going to get everything they're looking for, but you've got the community consensus component with that. Then layer on top of that, what Ken, I think, very appropriately identified, as we are now getting velocity with commercial projects along Seminole Pratt, to further help set the stage, Minto's willing to go ahead and fund with SID, and we would build it and turn it over as an asset to SID, the entry monuments. So like at every major corner, you see the little blade signs and lights and landscaping. Let's go ahead and do that for the park. So now we're creating a very welcoming appearance into that community. Then I think Ken's going to speak with Ryan here shortly about a fairly significant capital project that is underway that, I don't want to steal Ryan's thunder, but it's north of $10 million. Perhaps not as part of that, but coincident with that work, I think the mayor had a fantastic idea. What if, as part of this vision with the community, we have now a plan from Don, with a cost feasible analysis behind it that would be a roadmap for Ken and the community and the council and the board. What if then, now that we knew where all the fields are going to be, what if we just got one of those fields, you know, I don't think a day has gone by out here that we don't have a lake under construction somewhere. So we have a lot of equipment, you know, that maybe we could come to the table and help with some clearing of a field, you know, and getting it done to a spec that's suitable for the public to come out, fly a kite, play a pickup football game, lacrosse game, something, right? To again, just be that cornerstone to begin taking control of our own destiny, right? And if somebody comes along the way, well, we have the roadmap for them, right? So it's kind of becomes a win-win-win. And so that was the offer that really has sprung forward from some of the mayor's leadership in driving together a number of ideas here. You know, Ken thought tonight would be a fantastic venue to present that to the city council as well as to the SID board. I think Bob and DJ, there's provisions under the interlocal about coordination of park projects in particular. So it just seemed like tonight was a great venue to present that. And I'll kind of stop there and you see if there's any questions behind that idea.
When can we start?
Yeah.
I think it's a very good idea
Yeah.
because the community needs a park.
Right.
We are looking forward for this park for so long. It will be a very good idea if we can start and we take over this.
And it'd be something different, you know, the phase 2 of the amenity will be open. Don't want to get ahead of myself, but we'll finally have that built in totality, let's just say early next year. And there's some open field experience there, but that's patently different than kind of what we're talking about here, being able to fly a kite or throw a football or,
Picnics,
right.
walking, they
And-
can go with a golf cart.
And some of that can be really low impact. And, you know, back to Ken's point, you know, I'll just say this, maybe a little bit of money comes out of I'll use some of Ken's slush fund from the city, a little bit of the slush fund from the SID. You know, maybe I can find a little bit of earth moving equipment to contribute to the cause, but we're all creative, right? And that's the blessing of having Ken kind of be the focal point between all that to help leverage it. And like you said, Mayor, let's just get it going, right? It's low hanging fruit in my mind. And layer on top of that, you have the community engagement.
The sooner we put a plan together, the sooner we can start acting on it.
Agreed.
It's definitely step one.
Mr. Massey, how you feel about that?
Oh, I think.
I know you're shy and you don't like to say much.
Well, we've incorporated, Ryan was going to speak to, but we've incorporated into our construction plans that we have to come up with some fill. We've got to. So along on the backside of the parkway, where the landscaping is, on the backside, instead of at one time, it's just going to be pipes all down through there. We're going to dig that as part of our plan to use for fill, to stabilize the road going across for the construction and all. So we're going to dig that. So now it'll be a moat basically across there. So you'll cross through the landscaping and go over a water feature and then into the park. So we can get that part done, stabilize the road going through. One of the water mains we're bringing across, we'll bring a water main down to tie in part of this project. We'll have us potable water, plenty of it down to that end if we need it, because it's going to go across to Water's Edge. And then we're also bringing a reclaim line across as part of this project to help loop our system in case we had a problem, which also puts it right in the middle of the park. So we're by helping the whole community, we're also setting the stage to get reclaimed water, potable water, a nice entryway. We'll go ahead and put in the pipes for the crossing into from where the entrance signs would be. And so yes, we're in the extra fill, maybe build a few multi-purpose fields, you know, just put up, and because now we're just mowing it. You know, right now we're mowing, it just costs us money. We mow it every few months and it's not getting used. So we want to get it as soon as we can to a point where we could just make some general fields, get it seeded, grass coming up, and something people can, to John's point, can at least get out there, run the dog, you know, fly a kite, just make it usable without having all the craters and pits out there. Yeah, it's a start. And I think we'll start seeing some of that stuff pretty quick just with our ongoing projects. But Sorry.
Yeah, so it's, so it's actually kind of a good segue into what I'm kind of here to talk about. So my name is Ryan Wheeler. I'm the district engineer for Seminole Improvement District. Real quick, just kind of before we get into the capital improvement portion, just wanted to kind of just step back a little bit and talk about how the workings between myself and Suzanne, who's the city engineer. Basically, we have a bi-weekly call where we go over any kind of issues or any concerns or anything we have, or just kind of keep up to date what may have happened that one municipality didn't see from the other. So we have a bi-weekly call that's been great, and we continue to keep having that because it's good, because it's just a way for us to keep up with what's going on within the city. So that portion and that relationship with the city has been great. So I was just kind of wanting to go back and talk a little bit about that. But, as Mr. Carter was speaking about, we have some, as we're growing city and district, we have, some improvement projects that we need to do. One of those is we have the reclaim water main tank, existing water main tank down there. That's a 500,000 gallon. To meet the demands for the entire build out of the site, we're going to have to basically, construct another tank right next to it. That's going to be a 2 million gallon tank. So we're going to have a total of 2.5 million gallons of storage capacity that we're going to have, within our district. One of the reasons why that's important is we are a secondary, our agreement with Palm Beach County Water Utilities gives FPL the first, rights of refusal as for the reclaim water. So us being able to keep the, our tanks full in case we are, we get the notice, hey, we're not able to use that reclaimed water. We're still able to keep everything within the district looking good. So that's something that we're in the process of doing right now. It's actually probably going to be out on the street here, hopefully in the next month, getting bids, obtaining that so that we can go ahead and do that work. Because of the location of it and the location of the park, we're trying to keep the park in mind when we're doing, our work. We're not trying to just throw something there. We're trying to make sure that it blends in and it's not something you see as soon as you pull through the gates into, whatever park facility that we do out there. That was kind of one of the reasons why Scott was saying, instead of just putting old drainage pipes that you can't see along the backside of the parkway there, given that just another feature where you're, almost, you get into all the landscape, you have all your, moat, as we're calling it, it serves as a security measure, but it's also just kind of a way to make you feel like you're kind of getting into, a different world kind of, for, you're there for enjoyment and you're out of the hustle and bustle of Seminole Pratt Whitney. So those aspects we're including in the design of our capital improvement projects. So
What would FPNL need the reclaim for primarily?
So it's cooling water. Yeah.
They built that line to go out there for cooling. That's the largest gas fired plant east of the Mississippi. And it takes a lot of water to keep it working. So they constructed that line from town all the way out. Our saving grace was that it was going to cost them several $1 million more to go the route they had, or they could come underneath our canal to sit on. And so we negotiated with them, well, you can come under, but it put us next in line behind them, and we got pretty high water usage. So sometimes y'all didn't even feel, we've had a few bobbles here and there. We've had to irrigate and cut off water and work a couple of times when they have a problem at the plant. But by having more capacity, and 2.5 million gallons sounds like a lot, we're burning just slightly 500,000 gallons a day now. I mean, it's, are you going over that any? Are you?
Yeah, close to $1 million.
In the last 6 months, because 6 months ago, we were burning about 400,000 to 500,000 gallons a day.
Wow.
So, and now it's hot, no supplementary rain. So, we thought this would be, if everything goes right, it'd be about 2-day reserve, which would be good. And we also have some contingency being put in place also in case we have the ability to use some surface water for emergency backup.
Can
We-
you,
we-
like tap right into the canal?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
so,
have,
and that's, you know, another thing that we have that we've looked at is there's a, you know, in system that you can't connect to and it connects right to our line. So it gives us that factor of safety, one, to be able to, you know, pull some additional water, and two, if there's any type of work or anything we need to do to shut down, we have that availability to recharge our lines and still.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and so then the other, you know, thing that we're, you know, in the process of working on and getting out for bid is a facility on the south side of the FPL substation that's going to house SID offices. Is there going to be?
In the interim, until we have another facility, it'll also, everything we have on this side here with building department and city will be relocated over there as an interim measure until we have other facilities to move into. But we're looking at trying to figure out how to best move in phases and still keep everything operational.
And so what that does is, you know, it's kind of, you know, right now we're front and center along, you know, the main corridor within the city. Here we're, you know, it doesn't affect our, you know, ability to perform our services, but it's, you know, off the beaten path. So
such desirable real estate. Yes, yes.
Say that again about Wigball. Probably shouldn't say it this way, but most mornings I come in and I dread the Mr. Carter saying, guess what I did? You know, 65 days to be out and find a new home. I'm trying to anticipate.
I already saw the land.
Be ready for when it does happen. We can get set up faster, easier. It makes it easier for him to be able to market the land as well. So it's
It'll be a win-win.
it's a win-win, and one of the things that I've enjoyed since 2013 working here, this is definitely a totality of cooperative effort that everybody has grasped the vision. And everybody's working together. How do we do the vision? Oh, we got a little problem. Oh, we can overcome that because we can still accomplish the vision. That's been one of the to me, a blessing for all of us that I've worked for, making that happen. Next thing is we have is general discussion. Are there any other questions? So we will be doing at least two a year. So we're scheduled.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Great.
I'm sensing from this, we can't take any action, but Sid at its meeting will, next meeting, will take up discussion and possible action on getting Don on board. And then we can start that schedule and go forward from there. Like I say, hopefully we'll get these kind of ideas and stuff squared away earlier, like April of this coming year, so that if something the city needs to budget or city needs to budget, we can budget for from.
Great.
Questions from anybody or comments?
How often do you guys meet? Monthly?
Monthly.
We meet the first Monday of the month, you all meet the first Tuesday.
Excellent.
So then we can start in the park in October 1st for charrettes and meetings and trying to speed it up.
We have the Christmas park.
As soon as we can time. Proper contract with it, Suzanne, you got anything for us?
So I'll open it back up to y'all again. It never happened. So, anytime y'all want to go for a ride, give us a call. We'll be glad to tour you around, show you what facilities we're talking about, where they're going to go, where, you know, just how everything's laid out. There's a lot to it. All pretty simple, but it's just a lot of it. And we always look for a better idea. So we encourage people to give us their thoughts.
Yeah. I'm gonna take you up on
As long as they don't conflict mine, it's perfect.
that.
Guess the next thing is these comments from.
Comments? Let's start at the end there with Pilar. We'll work our way down.
I'm very happy that we can start the project of the park. Maybe a Christmas kind of park for this
We will not have a
December.
park by Christmas. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, next year.
But we might have something by next year.
And yeah, and thank you very much for the information. It was very helpful. It was very good. Thank you. Very impressive.
Thank you.
I agree with those sentiments from Pilar, but very enlightening, very educational. I feel like you all are so smart. I really do. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize all of us was going on in the city. So thank you all for sharing, and I'm not getting a water filter. That was one thing I did. Thank you all. Everything was well done. Thank you very much for sharing.
Ditto on the comments for the park system, and I enjoy having a joint meeting, and I look forward to having now 2 of these at least a year. So.
Excellent. Just want to thank everybody for coming out. I want to thank Aldo and Taylor for all of your hard work all the time. You guys are the unsung heroes of what goes on out here that a lot of people don't realize, and there's a backbone to it. I echo my colleagues' sentiments, and I just want to add that I really do enjoy the relationship that we have with Sid. I love the fact that there's no duplication of services. And one of my common, I'm not going to say favorite, but common things to do is, oh, that's a Sid issue. You got to take it up with that. And it's great. It's great being able to do that. But no, we're definitely stronger together, and we work very well together. Here to help any way we can, always. So I just want to thank everybody for all their hard work and leadership. Mr. President.
If there's anything y'all need, we're always here. And I mean, for us, it's a daily thing. So it's changing. And so we're always out there looking at it. And so I know when you're stepping in and out, that's why I offer anytime you want to go for a ride and look around, because it's when I'm gone for a week and I come back, and hell, I can't even get there from here anymore. They've taken out a ditch or taken out something. So you have to watch it all the time. But like I said, the invitation's always open.
I'll be putting on my sneakers.
Yep.
You won't need them for mine. I've got air conditioning in my truck. Ken will take you in the buggy. I will take you.
He'll take you on a high-class route.
Okay.
And my last name is Massey, Massey, just so that you know.
Oh, yes.
Oh, they spelled it wrong.
I think that was going to be a Massey, but it's not.
A French laugh. A French laugh.
All right, we got district board comments.
I think this has been a great to sit here and talk with you all. It's good to finally meet everybody in person. So, like you said, we've got a good relationship going, and just keep what we're doing.
I would agree. Thank you all for your time, and thank you for the presentation, and very much looking forward to the park idea.
We have anything from staff?
Zoe, does Julian have any comments, questions? Okay.
Just got a call.
We have any public comments?
Public comments is next.
Mayor, I received no previous comment cards. We'll give the virtual audience a moment to raise their virtual hands. I believe it's just staff on mine, though. If you wish to make a comment, please raise your virtual hand. If you, a caller that has, no callers on the line. Mayor, we have no comments.
There being no public comments, I will adjourn at 6:44 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great meeting.
Great meeting.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you guys.
I'm like, do I get this thing? Everyone's the water filtration.
I can't.
And I'm just like, is it
I
good?
know.
I don't know.
Just chomping.
My neighbor.
She's got
friend.
copies.